Super, wir machen jetzt weiter mit Bernd und Gabi. Sie werden quasi ihr Modell vorstellen, also die Lekton EG, die quasi im IT- und Kreativbereich tätig ist. Also wie haben Sie das aufgebaut und wie funktionieren Sie als eine Genossenschaft? Also Bernd, Gabi. Ja.
Okay, danke. Ich beginne. Danke für die Einladung und danke für diese Konferenz.
And thank you for this conference. It was very interesting and fascinating so far. I'm a founding member of the Lekton EG cooperative for IT and creatives. There were 4 creative members, founding members. A 5th member was then added, and in 2020 we added a staff member. Now I'd like to share my screen. I'll try to do that now. Is this working? Can you see my screen? Can you all see the screen? Yes. So what was our special situation to start with? We were all independent entrepreneurs, and we've all been working freelance for many, many years as self-employed persons, and we took all our idiosyncrasies into this cooperative. And one thing is that everyone used to work independently for themselves, so dividing labor, sharing labor was not something we knew. Customer acquisition, customer contacts, and our own work as graphic experts and software developers is something we always did alone on our own. And that, of course, was a learning process that suddenly we started to delegate some activities. And of course, self-organization is a major asset in the good quality, and we wanted to make sure that everybody will share in the responsibility. But still, we found out that to set up a project management, for instance, so that you have one function that looks after organization, make sure there is some internal adjustment, and that there's one voice speaking externally with customers. As I said, we all had large experience and long experience in working independently, and we contributed our own resources to the cooperative, our networks, our customers, and also our competences. And that were our own activities, our professional work as a programmer or graphic artist, but a lot more. We had one graphic person who was very good in doing Excel sheets. We had one software developers who was able to implement websites and web servers. So we had various different resources, and we could harness many synergies from that. That was very good for our customer projects, but also beneficial for our own organization. As software developers and graphic artists, we work in a knowledge-based industry, and suddenly it was a big advantage that there were so many colleagues with which you could exchange and engage. We could ask questions, we could ask them for guidance. There was some exchange, some sharing of things, and that of course improved the quality of our services. And in the cooperative, we also started last year to set up internal further education and training. So we did mutual education and training. One programmer gave a presentation on how to generate plugins in WordPress. We had a graphic artist who's very well versed in geo information system, a geolocation system, and she gave us a presentation on that. And these were things that were important and showed us that actually you can gain a lot if you share knowledge within the cooperative, because everybody will enhance their learning curve and then we also can know better and find out better what are the talents and abilities inside of our organization, and that also allowed us to better adjust and align the services we provide.
Dafür gibt es, glaube ich, keine englische Übersetzung. Also wir haben eine Native Speakerin gefragt, aber
And I am not sure what the proper word is in the English language. What is it? We're all independent, self-employed, and we were living in precarious situations up to then. And most of us wanted to change to employment to actually have all social benefits. We had a debate about growth within the cooperative, and there was a lengthy debate. Do we want to grow? How do we want to grow? And then we came back to what was most logical, namely, we thought we could take up people who were similar in their thinking, similar in their structure, that were used to be self-employed, that have their own customer base they can contribute, and who were independent of the. Unfortunately, we're getting very bad sound, so we cannot properly hear the speaker. I'm not sure whether everybody's affected or just us here, but we couldn't hear the speaker right now. I will continue now. Self-determination and free work, independent work is very important to us as much as openness and transparency. And that relates to the economic funds and how they are distributed. But we choose a form of cooperative because here this allows us to reconcile and combine non-material and material economic goals. Because initially cooperatives were set up as organizations that were to enable and promote solidarity management and work and activities that is based on solidarity, because together you're stronger than on your own. That is something we felt very strongly as former self-employed persons. There were so many positive repercussions that came from solidarity management, working on a basis of democratic solidarity. And that reflected in the size of the projects we could accept and take on, and also in the quality of the services we then provided. And as I said, we were able to improve the quality of our work. As I said, our members are the be-all and end-all. They're at the center of all our activities. That's a big issue for cooperative. It's all about the members. And if they fare well, then the cooperative fares well. The members are the democratic roots, the democratic basis of the cooperative, and they also have a controlling or monitoring function. And then the issue of taking the issue of cooperatives to the outside world. We want to reach out to others because we want to convey to them the message that we benefited from setting up a cooperative. And that is a message we want to spread, a finding we want to share. Not that things were all easy, but it's not as complicated as you would think to set up a cooperative. You need 2 founding members as a minimum. You need a very low capital contribution, you need articles of association, and you need this review or audit association. We are a member of Rückenwind, and Rückenwind Association places a focus on common will, solidarity, ecological sustainability, social justice, etc., etc. These are the values that are being upheld, and these are the values we can subscribe to as well. Okay, so much from my side. I will pass the floor to Bernd, and Bernd will go into the further depths of our own structure. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Bernd. I'm also a founding member of the Lekton Cooperative, and I think we can deal and handle the questions that come in afterwards, after my part, together. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. Absolutely interesting what I've had so far. And tying in with what Gabi said, I'd like to go into some details and show you some slides as to how our model works economically, how this initial self-employment, the sales we generated, the turnover we made, how this is being handled in our new structure and how that is distributed, and what is our answer to the pressing question of how is profit distributed, working time, in a fair and balanced manner. I'll try and share my screen with you. I think you should now see that in the full screen mode. Can you? Yes. I called my part the shared columns, and they're in English, the screenshots. And here, in English, there's two meanings to the word columns, because they're the columns in a building and the columns on a piece of paper. And it's to show you how we create transparency and how we can answer the question how the various revenues and sales made can be distributed. As you see, it's a bit skewed or slanted, so there is no even distribution. We started out on very different individual situations. In 2018, when we started, that's what it looked like. There were 4 people. Today, we are six working for Lekton, and 5 are members of the cooperative. We started in 2018 as 4 people, and with quite significantly different ideas and 2 questions. It was clear we wanted to actually overcome our precarious situations as single individual self-employed persons. Well, we did make money, but you couldn't fall ill, or you couldn't take leave or afford to lose a customer. So then we decided to set up and form the cooperative to work together. We all knew one another, so we had this basis of trust. We could confide in one another. We had worked on projects together, and we asked ourselves, how much do we need in terms of net revenue, and how much do we want to fund from the cooperative? And that was the starting point. We defined individual needs and how far are they covered by other works, activities or jobs, because most of us had other sideline activities, and one of us earned 50% of what they made outside of the cooperative, and this is still the case. So going forward in time, and let's have a look at how the situation looks after 2.5 years. Here you see the annual turnover for 2020. You see that there's new people who have been added, and you also see that there's a huge differences. This has not to do with the fact that person number 2 and member number 5 are very poor, and the 2 outer columns are very rich, the persons behind them, but it's that those 2 people with the lower columns have different jobs, other jobs, and one member even has 2 other jobs. So altogether, they do generate the net income they need, and they can live off well. And with Gabi and me, we derive the majority of our revenues from work in the cooperative. As Gabi said, we all were self-employed, and we we're accustomed to satisfying our customer needs through our own individual pillars, and that changed. Because obviously there's some overhead if you set up a cooperative. We are grateful that we are a member of the Rückenwind Association. That is absolutely helpful. They got us support, gave us support, but it does cost money, and it also costs server infrastructure. But that's all it took. Being self-employed, we were able to take our workstations, our desk, our tools, and contribute them to the cooperative. A sidestep here on what was said earlier in the debate. How can you be competitive as a cooperative? Now, in our case, you can see that compared to other more classical companies, we operate on a very small overhead. And this is something we had learned from our previous self-employment. And these overheads, of course, have to be shared. And how do you do that? We decided that the overheads will be shared on the basis of revenues generated or sales generated. You could have opted for the version on basing that on your earnings or income, but then we decided that we take a percentage rate of the turnover and apply it and distribute it in terms of overheads. But of course, the actual result can only be known at the end of the year when the financial statements are prepared. And at the end of the year, this is all recalculated and made sure that you pay your proper share. So we've paid for our overheads, running costs are covered, and then we have the annual turnover minus the overhead, and then we have costs, but also since the summer we started to actually build up reserves for future projects that might not be sufficiently funded for future payment of work that is done. So we have a cushion and we are accumulating savings for the future. But still this amount is very small, 5% of last year's turnover. In the startup phase we didn't do that at all, and now we're planning to step up that amount to 10%. So how much again do you pay? We again took the turnover or sales as a basis, and those who had higher sales had to pay more. So we paid for the second pot, if you wish, or column. So we have the annual turnover minus the overhead minus the savings, and we end up in the results for the individual. So if you compare that with the actual earnings situation, but it's not quite identical. What you can see is that we don't work profit-oriented but revenue-oriented. So we make sure that everyone earns as much as they need, and also from the cooperative and from other jobs. But that is the main principle. As we heard earlier, we do what we do develop software, we do graphics, we generate turnover, and then from that we don't pay fees on contract basis, but most of us are employed through service contracts. They have a regular income, they have social security, social protection, including the possibility to take the sickness leave or holidays or whatever. And then what we generate is reflected in what we earn, and it is defined a priori how much everybody wants to earn. But then there's differences among us. At the end of the year, somebody made more for them out of the cooperative and others made a little bit less or paid in less. So that you need some columns that are slightly in the minus and some that are slightly plus. And what is the big advantage of such an organization, of such a joint organization, is that you can help yourselves mutually if you have weaker times, if you have less projects to work on. Of course, we try and do that for 1 year, for 2 years. We equalize the pluses and the minuses, and a fair distribution amongst ourselves in relation to what we contribute. But of course, this gives us lots of flexibility during the year. Okay. My next slide gives you some insights on taxation. So we pay income tax from turnover and social insurance contribution, etc. So wage-related expenses and not operational expenses. This is in the light pink column. And then what you see is the net income, what remains, in dark pink. And that is more or less congruent with what we had actually set out in our plans. Every one of us makes a little bit more. Some make additional earnings because they have different jobs and do this job only as a sideline activity, as I said. And with other members, the situation is different. The cooperative work is their mainstay activity. And this is the result here for 2018. We are quite heterogeneous in how working time is distributed. One other colleague has 2 other jobs. Currently, she's on maternity leave, and I would assume she would carry on with her other 2 jobs when she comes back. We have somebody who's not yet a member of the cooperative, but he's in our model, he's employed, and the system will be the same. We apply to him perhaps 1 sentence. Before we employ somebody, we always vet that person, and we try to practically test cooperation. Do we work together? Do we fit together? Can we work together? But it is a possibility indeed to become a member of the cooperative. So much for a very brief overview of how this works in our cooperative. It is a specific situation. We all used to be former self-employed people. We had a customer base and turnover which we were able to contribute to the cooperative, because you need a business plan to set up a cooperative. And that was quite easy for us. We took 3 years as a basis for assessment and as a basis for the forecasts for the future. And hopefully things won't get worse, but rather better. And that was our business plan we submitted, and that made the foundation of our cooperative quite easier. And that made it easier than starting from scratch. We had an existing network, we had existing customers, and actually they are quite happy that they don't have to work with 1 single self-employed person, but with a group of people who work together. So even for your external relations, you have a unique selling proposition here. So it was worth it from our perspective, and it could be a model for people who would like to do the same and try the same. And this is the reason why I gave this presentation here today. Thank you very much.